A pregnant wife signs divorce papers at Christmas while his family laughed. What happened next left everyone speechless, tears streaming down her face. 8 months pregnant, Amani Whitmore pressed the pen against the divorce papers while her husband's entire family laughed and mocked her pain. It was Christmas Eve. The tree lights blinked behind her like witnesses to her humiliation. She had no idea the man sitting silently beside his cruel family was about to reveal a truth that would shatter every assumption they'd made about him, about her, and about the fortune hidden in plain sight. What happened next will make you rethink everything you believe about family, loyalty, sacrifice, and the quiet power of the underestimated. Before we dive into this story, if you love real-life stories about justice, karma, and unexpected revelations, hit that subscribe button right now. Seriously, do it. You're already here, you're already invested, and I promise you the stories on this channel will keep you hooked every single time. Drop a like on this video and comment below telling me where you're watching from. Are you in Atlanta, Lagos, London, Toronto? I want to know. Now, let's get back to Amani's story because what's about to unfold is absolutely jaw-dropping. The Whitmore music. A estate sat on 3 acres in Buckhead wrapped in evergreen garlands and thousands of twinkling white lights. Inside the music, grand colonial mansion, the scent of roasted turkey, honey-glazed ham, music, and sweet potato pie filled the air. Christmas music played softly from hidden speakers while relatives gathered in clusters, champagne flutes in hand, voices rising and falling in animated conversation. This was the annual Whitmore Christmas gathering, a clear-as-throat tradition spanning 4 decades. Senators, business mogul, judges, and philanthropists mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, their laughter echoing off marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the winter landscape beyond. In the corner of the expansive living room, near the towering Douglas fir adorned with gold ornaments and silk ribbons, Amani Whitmore sat on an upholstered bench, one hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. She wore a simple burgundy dress that stretched over her 8-month pregnancy, her natural hair pulled back into a low bun. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her cheeks streaked with dried tears. Across from her, perched on matching leather armchairs, sat the Whitmore matriarch, Claudette Whitmore, and her 3 daughters, Vivian, Celeste, and Belle. They watched Amani with expressions that ranged from amusement to outright disdain. "Are you finished crying yet?" Claudette asked, her voice sharp as winter wind. She was a tall woman in her late 60s, impeccably dressed in a cream suit, her silver hair styled in perfect waves. Diamond studs glinted at her ears. Amani didn't answer. She kept her gaze on the paper spread across the coffee table before her, the words blurring through her tears. Snort's petition for dissolution of marriage. Mother asked you a question. Vivian snapped. The eldest daughter leaned forward, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood. The least you could do is show some respect. Respect. Amani's voice came out broken, barely above a whisper. "You're making me sign divorce papers on Christmas Eve while I'm 8 months pregnant with your brother's child. Where's the respect in that?" Celeste laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "Oh, please don't act like you're some victim here. You knew exactly what you were doing when you trapped Kingston." "I didn't trap anyone," Amani said, her voice trembling with emotion. "We fell in love. We got married. This baby was planned by you." Belle interjected, examining her manicured nails with feigned boredom. "You saw a wealthy man and latched on like a leech. It's textbook gold digger behavior." Claudette raised a hand, silencing her daughters. She stood walking slowly toward Amani with the measured steps of someone accustomed to command. When she reached the coffee table, she picked up the divorce papers and held them out. "Sign them," she said flatly. "Kingston has already agreed. He's done with this charade." Amani looked past Claudette to where Kingston Whitmore sat near the fireplace, surrounded by his father, uncles, and cousins. He wore a tailored navy blazer and gray slacks, his posture relaxed, a glass of bourbon in his hand. He was laughing at something his cousin had just said, his head thrown back, completely at ease. Not once had he looked in her direction. "Kingston," Amani called out, her voice cracking, "please just talk to me." The laughter around him died. His relatives turned to stare at her, their expressions ranging from pity to contempt. Kingston slowly set down his glass and turned, his handsome face blank, emotionless. "What's there to talk about?" he asked, his tone casual as if discussing the weather. "My family's right, this was a mistake. We rushed into things, it's better to end it now before it gets messier." "Ceci? Yeah." Amani stood, her movements awkward with the weight of her pregnancy. "I'm carrying your baby, Kingston, our baby. How can you just sit there and act like none of this matters?" He shrugged. "The baby will be taken care of. My lawyers are handling the financial arrangements. You'll get a settlement. It's generous, actually, more than fair considering the circumstances." "I don't want your money," she said, her voice rising with desperation. "I want my husband. I want my family." Vivan let out an exaggerated sigh. "God, this is exhausting. Can someone just make her sign already?" "She will sign," Claudette said calmly, her eyes never leaving Amani's face. "Because she understands that she doesn't belong here. She never did." Amani's hands shook. She looked around the room at the faces watching her with cold detachment. Aunts who had smiled at her during brunch months ago now whispered behind raised hands. Cousins who had congratulated her at the wedding now smirked openly. Even the household staff stationed discreetly near doorways averted their eyes, uncomfortable witnesses to her public dismantling. "You people are cruel," Amani whispered, fresh tears spilling music down her cheeks. "All of you." "Laughter, we're realistic," Claudette corrected. "You came from nothing, Amani. You grew up in that little apartment in southwest Atlanta, working retail, no family wealth, no connections, no pedigree. You were pretty, I'll give you that. And Kingston was going through his rebellious phase, thinking he could play savior to some struggling girl. That's not what happened," Amani protested weakly. "Isn't it?" Celeste interjected. "You met him at that charity gala where you were serving orbs. 6 months later you were married. Tell me that wasn't calculated. I loved him, I still love him." Belle laughed again. "Love, how quaint. You loved the private jet trips, the penthouse suite, the credit cards with no limits. You loved what he could give you." Amani turned back to Kingston, her voice pleading. "Tell them that's not true. Tell them we were happy. Tell them about the nights we stayed up talking, about our plans for the nursery, about the names we picked out together." Kingston took another sip of his bourbon, his expression unchanged. "We had some good time," he admitted, "but my mother's right. We're from different worlds. It was fun while it lasted. But I need to be with someone who understands this life. Someone who fits." The words hit her like physical blows. She staggered slightly, catching herself against the bench. "Someone who fits," she repeated hollowly. "Someone like Simone Cartwright." A knowing silence fell over the room. Kingston's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Simone's family owns half of Buckhead," Vivan said smoothly. "Her father sits on 3 Fortune 500 boards. She went to Spelman just like Mother and all of us. She summers in Martha's Vineyard and winters in Aspen. Yes, Imani, someone exactly like Simone. And she's not pregnant with swollen ankles and stretch marks," Belle added with a cruel smile. "I mean, let's be honest." Imani's hand moved protectively to her stomach. The baby kicked, a strong flutter against her palm that reminded her this wasn't just about her anymore. "Sign the papers," Claudette repeated, her voice hardening. "We're giving you a way out with dignity and financial security, but if you refuse, we'll drag this through court. We have the best attorneys in Georgia. We'll paint you as exactly what you are, an opportunist who trapped our son. We'll make sure you walk away with nothing." "You can't do that," Imani said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I have rights. The baby has rights. Rights that will be settled in court," Claudette replied coldly. "And trust me, darling, we have judges who golf with my husband. We have connections you can't even fathom. You think anyone in this city is going to side with you over the Whitmore family?" Imani felt the walls closing in. Her breath came in short gasps, panic clawing at her chest. She looked again at Kingston, searching for any flicker of the man who had once held her hand and promised forever. He was checking his phone. "I can't believe this is happening," she whispered. "Believe it," Celeste said flatly. "Now sign." From across the room, Kingston's father, Walter Whitmore, finally spoke. He was a distinguished man in his 70s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. "Young lady," he said, his tone almost gentle, "you seem like a nice enough girl, but you must understand families like ours operate differently. Marriage isn't just about feelings. It's about legacy, about maintaining standards. You were a lovely distraction for Kingston, but now it's time for everyone to move forward appropriately. Apply, Imani echoed, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. Yes, Walter confirmed. We'll ensure you and the child are financially comfortable. The settlement includes a lump sum and monthly support until the child turns 18. You'll sign a non-disclosure agreement, of course, and relinquish any claim to the Whitmore name or estate. In return, you'll have more money than you ever would have earned in your lifetime. I don't want your money, Imani repeated, but her voice was barely audible now. Then what do you want? Claudette demanded. Because you certainly can't stay married to my son. Imani looked down at the papers again. The elegant calligraphy of the law firm's letterhead swam before her eyes. She thought about the tiny apartment she'd grown up in, the nights her mother worked double shifts, the scholarships and loans that had gotten her through a community college. She thought about meeting Kingston at that charity event, how he'd smiled at her like she was the only person in the room, how he'd shown up at her workplace the next day with flowers, how he'd proposed on a rooftop overlooking the city, telling her she made him feel free. None of it had been real, or maybe it had been real once. Before his family got involved, before they'd whispered poison in his ear, before he'd remembered who he was supposed to be. I need a pen, she said finally, her voice hollow. Vivan practically jumped forward with a designer ballpoint, placing it in Imani's trembling hand with barely concealed triumph. Imani sat back down on the bench, the papers in front of her. She could hear the Christmas music still playing. Something about joy and peace, the snort's irony cutting deep. Her hand hovered over the signature line. Imani, the voice came from the doorway. Deep, calm, familiar. Everyone turned. Standing in the arched entrance to the living room was a man Imani had met only once before at the wedding. Kingston's younger brother, Cairo. He was different from the rest of the family. Where they wore their wealth-like armor, Cairo wore simple black jeans and a gray sweater. Where their eyes held calculation, his held something gentler. He was tall with warm brown skin and natural locks pulled back into a ponytail. He worked overseas, she remembered. Something with international development. Cairo, Claudette said sharply. This doesn't concern you. It does if you're forcing a pregnant woman to sign legal documents under duress on Christmas Eve. He replied evenly, stepping into the room. His eyes found him. You don't have to do this right now. Stay out of it, Kingston warned, finally showing some emotion. This is between me and my wife. Your wife who you've been ignoring all evening, Cairo asked. Your wife who's about to give birth to your child. That wife, Cairo, we've been through this. Walter interjected. The situation is complicated. No, father, it's actually very simple. Kingston made vows. Imani is carrying his child, and instead of supporting her, you're all ganging up on her like vultures. How dare you? Vivian hissed. Cairo ignored her, moving toward Imani. When's the last time you ate something? Imani blinked, caught off guard by the question. I don't remember. There's a feast in the dining room, but I'm guessing no one offered you a plate. He extended his hand. Come on, let's get you some food. She's signing the papers, Claudette said coldly. She's 8 months pregnant and crying, Cairo shot back. She needs food and rest, not your intimidation tactics. I said stay out of this, Cairo, Kingston said, standing now, his face flushed with anger or alcohol or both. You've been gone for 3 years working in Ghana or wherever. You don't know anything about what's been happening here. I know you married someone you claim to love and now your family is treating her like garbage, Cairo replied. I know that much. The tension in the room crackled like static. Imani watched this stranger, this brother-in-law. She barely knew defend her against his own blood. It made something crack open in her chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Thank you, she whispered, but it's okay. They're right, I don't belong here. Cairo crouched down in front of her, his eyes level with hers. Listen to me carefully. You don't have to make any decisions tonight. Not while you're emotional, not while you're being pressured. These papers will still exist tomorrow, next week, next month, but right now you need to take care of yourself and that baby. She needs to sign, Claudette repeated, her voice ice cold. No, Cairo said firmly, standing. She doesn't, and if any of you continue this harassment, I'll make one phone call to have a judge issue an emergency protective order. You wouldn't dare, Vivian breathed. Test me. The room fell silent. Even the Christmas music seemed to fade into nothing. Imani could feel her heart pounding, the baby moving restlessly inside her. Kingston laughed, but it was forced, uncomfortable. "This is ridiculous." She was about to sign. "Imani, tell him you were about to sign." Imani looked at the papers, then at the pen in her hand, then at Cairo, who stood watching her with patient, kind eyes that asked for nothing, promised nothing, but simply offered the space to breathe. "I need to go to the bathroom," she said suddenly. "Imani," Kingston started. "Let her go," Cairo said quietly. Imani stood clutching her belly and walked toward the hallway. Every step felt like moving through water, heavy and slow. She could feel their eyes on her back, could hear the whispered hisses starting as soon as she left the room. The guest bathroom was down a long corridor lined with family portraits. Generations of Whitmore staring down at her with their successful, entitled faces. She locked the door, leaned against it, and finally let herself sob great heaving gasps that shook her entire body through the door, muffled by walls and distance. She could hear raised voices. Cairo arguing with his family, Kingston defending their decision. Claudette's sharp commands cutting through everything. And in that bathroom surrounded by gold fixtures and expensive marble, Imani Whitmore wondered how her fairy tale had become a nightmare, and whether the divorce papers waiting in that living room might actually be her only escape from a family that had never wanted her at all. The baby kicked again, stronger this time. She placed both hands on her belly and whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But for what exactly? She wasn't sure anymore. Imani splashed cold water on her face, watching the tears mix with droplets that dripped into the marble sink. Her reflection stared back, puffy-eyed, swollen-faced, unrecognizable. When had she become this person, this broken woman signing away her marriage on Christmas Eve while strangers who called themselves family laughed at her pain? A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. "Imani." Cairo's voice soft through the door. "I brought you some food." She dried her face with a monogrammed hand towel, took a shaky breath, and opened the door. Cairo stood there holding a plate covered with a cloth napkin, steam rising from beneath it. "Sweet potato sewell, collarded greens, mac and cheese, and turkey," he said. "I figured you might need sustenance more than signatures." Despite everything, Imani felt a small, sad smile tug at her lips. "Thank you. There's a sitting room 2 doors down, quieter, private. You can eat in peace." She hesitated. "Your family can wait," he said firmly. "Come on." She followed him to a smaller, cozier room with burgundy walls and built-in bookshelves. A leather couch faced a modest fireplace where logs crackled softly. Cairo gestured for her to sit, placing the plate on a side table within reach. Imani sank into the cushions, her body exhausted. The baby shifted and she winced slightly. "Are you okay?" Cairo asked, concern flickering across his face. "Just Braxton Hicks contractions," she said. "They come and go." "The doctor said it's normal this late in pregnancy." He nodded, sitting in a chair across from her. "When are you due?" "January 15th. 3 weeks, give or take." An awkward silence settled between them. Imani picked up the plate, suddenly ravenous. The food was delicious, real Southern cooking that reminded her of her grandmother's kitchen. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, letting the warmth settle her stomach and calm her nerves. Cairo watched quietly, not with the judgment she'd felt from the others, but with something gentler. Concern maybe, or just basic human decency. "Why are you helping me?" she asked between bites. "You barely know me." He considered the question, leaning back in his chair. "Because what they're doing out there is wrong. Simple as that. They're your family. That doesn't make them right." Imani set down her fork, studying him. "Kingston said, you've been in Ghana for 3 years. Almost 4, Cairo corrected. "I work with a nonprofit building water systems in educational facilities in rural communities. I only came back because father had a health scare last month. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here either." "You don't like the family business?" Cairo smiled wryly. "Let's just say I had different priorities. The Whitmore legacy is real estate development, luxury properties, high-end commercial spaces, very profitable, very prestigious, very." He paused, searching for the word hollow. "But you're still a Whitmore, in name only." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Look, I'm not going to pretend I understand everything between you and Kingston, but I remember your wedding. I flew back for it. I saw how he looked at you that day. That wasn't fake." Tears pricked her eyes again. "It feels fake now, because my mother got in his head." Claudette Whitmore is a master manipulator. She's been controlling Kingston since birth. He was supposed to marry Simone Cartwright. They've had that arrangement since both kids were teenagers. When he broke it off to marry you, Mother saw it as a personal betrayal. So she's been poisoning him against me for months. Cairo confirmed. Every family dinner, every phone call, every opportunity, telling him he made a mistake, that you trapped him, that the baby was a ploy to secure his inheritance. She even hired a private investigator to dig into your background. Amani's stomach turned. What did they find? Nothing. You're exactly who you said you were. But when evidence doesn't support Mother's narrative, she just creates new narratives. She's been working on Kingston psychologically, breaking him down bit by bit until he started believing her version of reality. Why are you telling me this? Cairo met her eyes. Because you deserve to know what you're up against, and because I think you should fight back. Fight back. Imani laughed bitterly. Against the Whitmore family. Cairo, I'm 8 months pregnant with no money, no family support, no lawyer who could go up against theirs. What exactly am I supposed to fight with? The truth, he said simply. Before she could respond, the door burst open. Kingston stood there, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. What the hell is this? It's called basic human kindness, Cairo replied calmly. You should try it sometime. I want to talk to my wife alone. No, Amani said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. Kingston blinked. Excuse me, I said no. You've ignored me all evening. You let your family humiliate me, mock me, threaten me. Now you want to talk. No, Kingston. We're done talking. Imani, don't be dramatic. Dramatic. She stood, her voice rising. You're divorcing me on Christmas Eve while I'm pregnant with your child, and I'm the one being dramatic. See, this is exactly what Mother warned me about, Kingston said, his words slurring slightly. The emotional manipulation, the victim complex. Get out, Cairo interjected, standing. Now this is my family's house and she's your pregnant wife. Show her some goddamn respect or leave. Kingston's eyes narrowed, flicking between them. Is something going on here? Is that what this is? You're moving in on my wife. Ciro's jaw tightened. You're drunk and you're saying things you'll regret. Walk away, Kingston. Don't tell me what to do in my own house. It's not your house. It's Father's house. And if you don't leave this room right now, I'll make sure he knows how you've been treating Imani tonight. Kingston laughed, but there was no humor in it. Like Father would take her side over mine. You really have been gone too long, little brother. You don't understand how things work here anymore. I understand perfectly, Cairo replied coldly. I understand that you're a coward who let Mother turn you into a puppet. I understand that you're throwing away your marriage and your child because you're too weak to stand up to Claudette. And I understand that 10 years from now, when you're miserable in your arranged marriage to Simone Cartwright, you'll realize exactly what you lost tonight. Kingston's face went white. For a moment, Amani thought he might lunge at Cairo. Instead, he turned to her, his expression hardening. Fine, don't sign tonight, but you will sign, Amani, because you know as well as I do that you can't win against us. You're going to walk away with whatever settlement we offer, or you're going to walk away with nothing. Your choice. He left, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed felt deafening. Amani sank back onto the couch, her hands shaking. I'm sorry, Cairo said quietly. I shouldn't have provoked him. No, Amani shook her head. You were right about all of it. He is a coward, and I was a fool for not seeing it sooner. She covered her face with her hands, fighting back another wave of tears. Cairo moved to sit beside her, not touching, just present. What am I going to do? She whispered. Even if I don't sign tonight, eventually I'll have to. They have money, lawyers, connections, everything. I have nothing. That's not entirely true. She looked up at him. What do you mean? Cairo hesitated, seeming to weigh his words carefully. There's something you should know about the Whitmore family structure. Something Kingston probably never told you. What? When our grandfather died, he left the bulk of his estate in a trust. Not to Father directly, but to all his descendants. It's split evenly among all grandchildren. Kingston has his share, yes, but so do I, and so do Vivian, Celeste, and Belle. I don't understand what that has to do with me. The trust includes a protection clause. Any grandchild who divorces within the first 5 years of marriage has to forfeit 20% of their share to the spouse, regardless of prenup terms. It was grandfather's way of encouraging stable marriages. Amani's breath caught. Kingston never mentioned that because he probably doesn't remember it. The trust is complex, managed by a third-party law firm, but I read through it last week when I was reviewing father's estate planning documents. That clause is in there, buried in the fine print. How much are we talking about? Cairo paused. Each grandchild's share is currently worth approximately $80 million. $20% would be $16 million. The number hung in the air between them. Impossible. Unfathomable. $16 million. Amani repeated numbly. Plus whatever child support the court mandates, which with the Whitmore assets would be substantial. You're not as powerless as they want you to believe. Why are you telling me this? This hurts your family, hurts your brother. Cairo's expression softened. Because it's the right thing to do. Because that baby deserves financial security, and because maybe, just maybe, if Kingston knows he's about to lose that much money, he'll actually stop and think about what he's doing. He won't, Imani said quietly. He's made up his mind. Your mother made sure of that, then at least you'll be protected. You and the baby. Imani pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to process everything. $16 million. It was more money than she could comprehend. Enough to ensure her child would never want for anything. Enough to build a life free from the Whitmore's control. I need a lawyer, she said. I know someone, a colleague from law school who specializes in estate law. She's brilliant, ruthless, and she owes me a favor. I can call her tonight. On Christmas Eve, Cairo pulled out his phone. For this, she'll answer. While he stepped into the hallway to make the call, Imani sat alone with her thoughts. The baby kicked again, a firm reminder of why she was fighting. She thought about her mother, who'd raised her alone after Amani's father left, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep them fed and housed, who'd taught her that dignity couldn't be bought or sold. Her mother would tell her to fight. Cairo returned, his expression neutral. She's coming. She'll be here in an hour. Her name is Rashida Thompson, and she said not to sign anything until she reviews it. Cairo. Imani started, emotion thick in her throat. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me, just promise me something. What? Don't let them make you feel small. You're not what they said you are. You're not a gold digger or a manipulator or any of those things. You're a woman who fell in love and got caught in a family that values money over people. That's their failure, not yours. Tears spilled over. But this time they felt different. Less like defeat, more like release. They're going to be furious, she said. When they find out I'm not signing their papers, that I'm lawyering up, that I know about the trust clause, they're going to come after me with everything they have. Cairo nodded. Probably, but you'll be ready and you won't be alone. Why are you doing this, really? He was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. When I was younger, before I left for Ghana, I was engaged. Her name was Aaliyah. She came from a working-class family. First-generation college graduate, brilliant mind. Mother hated her. Spent 2 years destroying our relationship with the same tactics she's using on you. By the time Aaliyah left, she was a shell of herself. I was too young, too cowardly to stand up to my family. I lost her because I didn't fight hard enough. I'm sorry, don't be. It taught me who I wanted to be. And it taught me that family isn't always the people you're related to. Sometimes it's the people who show up when things get hard. He met her eyes. I'm showing up now because I didn't then. Clear's throat before Imani could respond. Voices erupted from the living room. Loud, angry, unmistakably Claudette's sharp tone cutting through the Christmas music. What now? Imani whispered. Cairo stood, moving toward the door. Stay here, I'll handle it. But Amy followed him anyway, her heart pounding. They emerged into the hallway just as Claudette, Walter, and all 3 sisters came storming toward them. What exactly did you tell her? Claudette demanded, her face tight with fury. Kingston says she's refusing to sign, and you're filling her head with nonsense about fighting us in court. I told her the truth, Cairo said calmly. The truth? Vivian scoffed. You told her some fantasy where she walks away with millions. That's not happening. Actually, it is. Rashida Thompson's voice rang out from the foyer. Snorts, she stood there in a black wool coat, a leather briefcase in hand, her locks styled in an elegant updo. She was a petite woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an even sharper presence. Hello, Whitmore family. I'm Miss Thompson, and I'll be representing Mrs. Amani Whitmore in these divorce proceedings. Claudette's mouth tightened into a thin line. This is our family home. You can't just. I was invited by Cairo Whitmore, a legal resident of this property, so yes, I can. Rashida walked forward, her heels clicking authoritatively on the marble. Now, where are these papers I've heard so much about? What happened next would become the longest night of Imani's life. But for the first time since Kingston had told her his family wanted a divorce, she didn't feel alone. And somewhere in that massive house, Kingston Whitmore sat with his family, completely unaware that the quiet, pregnant woman they'd mocked had just armed herself with the one thing that could tear apart everything they'd built. The truth. Rashidita Thompson sat at the Whitmores' dining table like she owned it. The divorce papers spread before her, a pair of reading glasses perched on her nose, the Christmas decorations around them. The gold-trimmed china and crystal stemware seemed absurdly festive for what was unfolding. Claudette stood at the head of the table, her arms crossed, jaw tight. Walter sat beside her, his earlier calm replaced with barely concealed irritation. The three daughters hovered nearby, their champagne glasses forgotten. Kingston leaned against the doorframe, his earlier bravado replaced with uncertainty. Cairo and Imani sat together on the opposite side, united in silence. "Well," Rashida said finally, removing her glasses and looking up, "this is interesting." "What's interesting?" Claudette snapped. "It's a straightforward divorce petition with a generous settlement offer." "Generous?" Rashida smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Mrs. Twitmore, this settlement is insultingly low given your family's net worth. $250,000 and $5,000 monthly in child support for a family with assets exceeding $300 million. That's more than fair," Vivian interjected. She was married less than 2 years. Rashida turned her sharp gaze to Vivian. "And she's carrying the Whitmore heir. Or does that not factor into your calculations?" "The child will be provided for," Walter said stiffly. "Indeed. Which brings me to something fascinating I discovered while reviewing Georgia trust law during my drive here." Rashida pulled out a tablet, scrolling through documents. The Whitmore Family Trust, established by Marcus Whitmore Sr. in 1987, contains several protection clauses. Would anyone like to remind me what Section 7 subsection C entails? The room went silent. Cairo caught Imani's eye and gave her the smallest nod. Claudette's expression darkened. "How do you know about the trust structure?" "Because unlike your son, who apparently never read the documents he signed, I actually do my homework. Section 7, subsection C clearly states that any beneficiary who divorces within 5 years of marriage forfeits 20% of their share to the spouse, regardless of prenuptial agreements. It supersedes all other arrangements. That clause is outdated," Claudette said quickly. "It hasn't been enforced in decades." "Actually, it was enforced in 2003 when your nephew divorced his first wife. She received $14 million. The case file is public record." Rashidita looked at Kingston. "Did you know about this clause when you asked for a divorce?" Kingston shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't." "Well, you do now. Based on current valuations, Mrs. Imani Whitmore is entitled to approximately $16 million from your trust share plus standard child support calculations, which given your income would be around $25,000 per month." The number landed like a bomb in the center of the room. $16 million. Bell gasped. "That's insane." "That's the law," Rashidita corrected. "Your grandfather's law specifically. Apparently, he valued family stability more than you all do." Claudette's face had gone pale, her composure cracking. "We can contest that clause. It's archaic, unfair. It's legally binding," Rashidita interrupted. "I've already consulted with 3 estate attorneys tonight, including one who helped draft the original trust. The language is airtight. Unless you want to tie this up in court for years, costing millions in legal fees with zero guarantee of success, I suggest we negotiate in good faith." "This is blackmail," Vivian hissed. "No, this is consequences," Cairo said quietly. "You tried to bully Imani into signing away her rights without proper representation. Now she has representation, and you're learning what this divorce will actually cost." Kingston pushed off from the doorframe, his face flushed. "Imani, come on. You don't really want to do this. We can work something out, just the two of us, without lawyers and threats." Imani looked at him, really looked at him, the man who'd promised her forever. The man who'd laughed while his family humiliated her. The man who'd sat silent while they threatened to take everything. "You had your chance to work it out," she said softly. "Hours ago when I was crying and begging you to talk to me. You chose them over me, over our baby. So now we do this the legal way. You're making a mistake, Claudette said, her voice cold as winter. You think you can walk away with our money and live happily ever after. We'll destroy you in the press. We'll make sure everyone knows what you really are. Please do, Rashidita said pleasantly, because public sympathy will absolutely side with the pregnant woman who was forced to sign divorce papers on Christmas Eve while her husband's wealthy family mocked her. The media will eat that story alive. Is that really the publicity the Whitmore name needs? Walter cleared his throat, the first wise move anyone had made all evening. Let's all calm down. Clearly, emotions are running high. Perhaps we should table this discussion until after the holidays. Let cooler heads prevail. I'm afraid that won't work, Rashida replied, because Mrs. Whitmore is currently living in a hostile environment with a family that's made their contempt for her abundantly clear. My immediate concern is her safety and well-being, especially this close to her due date. Safety? Claudette scoffed. We're not criminals. No, but you're intimidating a pregnant woman, which could be construed as emotional abuse, especially with witnesses present. Rashida glanced at Cairo. I assume you'd be willing to testify about tonight's events if necessary. Absolutely, Cairo said. Claudette turned on her son with fury in her eyes. You would betray your own family. I'm standing up for what's right. If you see that as betrayal, that says more about you than me. The tension crackled like electricity. Imani felt the baby moving restlessly, her own anxiety transferring through her body. She pressed a hand to her belly, trying to calm both of them. Rashidita noticed. Mrs. Whitmore, are you all right? Just tired, Imani admitted. It's been a very long night. Then let's wrap this up. Rashida stood collecting the papers. Here's what's going to happen. I'm taking these documents with me. I'll review them thoroughly with my client and respond with our counter offer by December 28th. In the meantime, Mr. Kingston Whitmore will vacate the marital residence, or Mrs. Imani Whitmore will move to alternate accommodations with expenses covered by Mr. Whitmore. She will not be subjected to any further contact with this family unless through proper legal channels. The marital residence is in Kingston's name, Walter pointed out. Actually, Cairo interjected. According to the deed I reviewed this afternoon, the penthouse is held in trust as a marital asset. Imani has every right to stay there, and Kingston has every obligation to leave if his presence causes her distress. Kingston's jaw dropped. You went through my property records. I went through family trust documents that I, as a beneficiary, have legal access to. Don't confuse the two. This is unbelievable, Celeste muttered. Cairo, you're actually helping her steal from your own brother. I'm helping ensure a pregnant woman and her child are treated fairly. If you see that as theft, maybe examine your own values. Claudette's hands trembled with barely controlled rage. You're going to regret this, both of you. When this is over, you'll wish you'd taken our generous offer and walked away quietly. Are you threatening my client? Rashidita asked, her voice dangerously soft. I'm stating facts. The Whitmore family doesn't lose. We don't back down, and we certainly don't let outsiders dictate terms to us. Then I guess we'll see you in court, Rashida replied. She turned to Imani. Let's go, you shouldn't be here any more tonight. Imani stood slowly, her body exhausted. As she moved toward the door, Kingston stepped forward, blocking her path. Imani, please, can we just talk, just 5 minutes alone? She looked up at him. This man she'd loved, this man who'd broken her. What's left to say, Kingston? You made your choice. You chose your mother's approval over our marriage. You chose their money over our child. You chose everything except me. That's not fair. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. You're right. I don't understand, because when my mother pressured me not to marry you, said you'd break my heart, I chose you anyway. I chose us. You couldn't do the same. His eyes glistened with what might have been tears or might have been regret. I do love you. I know you don't believe that right now, but I do. Love isn't enough when you're too weak to fight for it, Imani said quietly. Then she stepped around him and walked toward the foyer. Cairo grabbed his own coat. I'm going with her. Cairo, don't you dare, Claude warned. If you walk out that door with her, you're choosing her over your family. He paused, looking back at his mother, his father, his siblings. No, mother, I'm choosing decency over cruelty. There's a difference. He followed Imani and Rashida out into the cold December night. The Christmas lights on the estate seemed to mock them. all that forced cheer and manufactured joy. A luxury SUV waited in the circular driveway, Rashida's driver already warming the engine. "Where are you staying tonight?" Cairo asked Amani. "I don't know. I can't go back to the penthouse. Not yet. Maybe a hotel." "Stay at my place," Cairo offered. "I have a guest room. It's comfortable and private. You need rest, not a hotel where photographers might find you once this story breaks." "I can't impose." "You're not imposing, and frankly, I'd feel better knowing you're somewhere safe." He looked at Rashida. "Does that work legally? As long as it's documented and appropriate." "Yes, actually, it's probably the smartest move. The family can't claim abandonment if you're staying with a relative." Monty felt tears threatening again, but this time from gratitude rather than pain. "Thank you, both of you." They drove through Atlanta's quiet streets, the city dressed in holiday lights that blurred through Amani's exhausted eyes. When they reached Cairo's townhouse in Grant Park, it was modest compared to the Whitmore estate. A brick building with a small front garden and warm lights in the windows. Inside, it was cozy, filled with artifacts from his time in Ghana, photographs of smiling children and completed water projects, books stacked on every surface. It felt lived in, real, so different from the cold perfection of the Whitmore mansion. "Guest rooms upstairs, first door on the left," Cairo said. "Fresh towels in the bathroom, and I'll put out some clothes that might fit. Sweats and a t-shirt." "Thank you," Imani whispered. After Rashida left with promises to call in the morning, Imani climbed the stairs slowly, her body heavy with exhaustion and pregnancy. The guest room was simple but comfortable, with a quilted bedspread and soft lighting. She found the clothes Cairo had mentioned changed gratefully out of her wine-stained dress and sank onto the bed. Her phone buzzed. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages, most from Kingston, some from his sisters, a few from numbers she didn't recognize. She turned the phone off completely. For a long moment she just sat there processing everything that had happened. This morning she'd woken up as Kingston's wife, nervous about the Christmas gathering but hopeful they could reconnect. Now she was sleeping in his brother's guest room, lawyered up and ready for war, her marriage destroyed and her future uncertain. But she was still standing and her baby was still safe. A soft knock on the door. "Imani, I made tea, chamomile, it's good for pregnancy." She opened the door. Cairo stood there with 2 steaming mugs. "You didn't have to do that, I know." He handed her a mug. "How are you feeling?" "Honestly, I don't know." Terrified, angry, relieved, all of it at once. "That's understandable." He leaned against the doorframe. "Listen, I know tonight was brutal, but you did something brave. You stood up for yourself and your child. A lot of people wouldn't have had that strength." "I had help," she said, meeting his eyes. "If you hadn't stepped in, you would have found another way. I just sped up the timeline." They stood there for a moment. 2 people who'd been strangers 24 hours ago, now bound together by the wreckage of a family dinner. "Get some rest," Cairo said finally. "Tomorrow's going to be complicated. The family will regroup, strategize, probably try to reach out directly. You need to be ready." "I will be, I promise." After he left, Imani crawled under the covers, cradling her belly, feeling her baby's gentle movements. She thought about all the Christmas Eves before this one, the happiness she'd imagined for her family, the future she'd planned. It was all gone now, but maybe that wasn't entirely a bad thing. Maybe some foundations needed to crumble before you could build something stronger. Her phone, still turned off on the nightstand, held dozens of messages she hadn't read. She'd deal with them tomorrow. Tonight she just needed to survive, to rest, to gather her strength for the battles ahead. As she drifted towards sleep, she thought about the $16 million, the number that had changed everything. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about recognition, about being seen as worthy of protection, of value, of consideration. The Whites had spent all evening telling her she was nothing, and then their own grandfather's legal documents had proven them wrong. Outside, snow began to fall, rare for Atlanta, coating the city in white. Christmas morning was coming, but it would look nothing like anyone had planned. In the Whitmore estate across town, Claudette sat in her study, already on the phone with lawyers, strategizing how to minimize the damage. Kingston drank alone in his room, staring at his phone, too proud to call but too uncertain to sleep. The sisters whispered in the hallway about reputation management and media control. And Cairo, in his own bedroom down the hall from Amani, pulled out his laptop and began documenting everything he'd witnessed, every threat, every manipulation, creating a timeline that would protect her if things got ugly, because they would get ugly. The Whitmores didn't lose gracefully, but for the first time in a very long time, Cairo felt like he was on the right side of something. And in the guest room, Imani Whitmore, pregnant and exhausted and heartbroken, fell asleep, knowing that sometimes the people who saved you weren't the ones you expected. Sometimes they were the ones who simply chose to show up when everyone else walked away. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering everything in white, fresh and clean and new. And somewhere in that snow-quiet night, a baby kicked against her mother's belly, restless and ready, waiting for a world that would be complicated and imperfect, but ultimately finally free. Viewers, do you think Amani made the right choice standing up to the Whitmores? What would you have done in her position? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to share where you're watching from. If you believe in stories about justice, courage, and standing up for yourself, hit that subscribe button and like clears throat this video. More powerful stories coming your way